Oh my God, you guys, I cannot believe this video. They are telling a story that Nolan Wells' parents is under fire. A lot of people are saying they don't feel like they're genuine. They're trying to say that Ben and Al is just doing this for money and then the parents aren't right. And I need you guys to look at this video. I don't know if I believe that. But this video is telling an interesting story from a different angle, and I'm just trying to just put all the cards on the table so we can finally tell the truth. And you tell me in the comments, what do you think about it? Do you think that it's fair that we have grieving parents that are under fire with so much pressure? What's your stance? Put it in the comment section. Watch this video. Once you finish watching this video, you're going to be blown away by what they're saying about Nolan Wells' parents. Okay, check it out.
And this is the part that bothers me, because I don't know if she intentionally did this in a malicious way, which will make me lose a tremendous amount of respect for her, or are these hood knuckle dragging thugs who are siphoning money out the black community, leveraging young brothers, convinced her to say this in order to push it.
I knew that the mother didn't just get the phone and went through it and realized stuff when was out of place. I knew it was more.
Know that there is a conflict in the stories, and we are not stopping until we know what happened to Nolan Wells.
Not Nolan Wells' mother, Christine Wansley, suddenly finding herself at the center of intense public criticism after Judge Mathis openly questioned her public statements. The situation has caught a lot of attention because he suggested that several of the claims she shared during television appearances don't line up with other details that have surfaced. That surprised many people, especially since he has been one of the strongest voices calling for answers in Nolan's case from the very beginning. What makes this even more surprising is that Judge Mathis has consistently supported efforts to bring clarity to what happened to Nolan, and he has made it clear that he plans to keep speaking out. Even with that support, though, he didn't hold back when discussing Christine's version of events. He explained that he still believes Nolan's case deserves a full and careful review, but he also suggested that Christine may have changed parts of the story over time in hopes of encouraging authorities to take additional action. Those comments quickly sparked even more debate online. According to ongoing public discussion, Christine reportedly fears that Nolan's case may never reach a clear resolution, and many believe that concern has influenced how she has described certain events. Some people have even claimed that important details may have shifted as the story continued to unfold, although those claims remain part of the public conversation rather than established fact. As more people began comparing earlier interviews with later statements, questions started piling up from every direction. Many viewers point to Christine's earliest television appearances on Good Morning America as the moment these questions first gained momentum. During that interview, she described what she said she discovered after recovering Nolan's phone, including details involving his Snapchat account. Since then, those statements have been closely examined alongside later interviews, leading many people to notice differences that have fueled even more discussion about the timeline and the overall story. Christine explained that Nolan enjoyed recording moments from his everyday life and was always documenting what he was doing, so she felt confident there would be videos or messages from the 4th of July, the day he unexpectedly vanished. That made her even more determined to check his phone once she was finally able to recover it. But according to her, the results were nothing like she expected. And that discovery immediately raised more questions than answers. She said that when she looked through Nolan's phone, his Snapchat account appeared completely empty, and she also claimed there were no text conversations with his friends from that day. According to her account, it seemed as though those messages had disappeared as well. Christine suggested that someone may have accessed the phone and removed information that she believed had once been there because it could have provided important clues. Those claims quickly became one of the biggest talking points surrounding the case.
Mom is lying, Warren's lying, or Katie's lying.
The forensic autopsy came back, and lo and behold, even though they're trying to downplay it, and I understand Ben Crump and NAACP and others don't want to try and jump to conclusion or.
That's when the story took another unexpected turn. Warren Hudson, one of the people who had been on the boat with Nolan, publicly pushed back against those claims. He stated that he never went through Nolan's phone, didn't know the passcode, and had no reason to access it at all. Another friend also supported that version of events, saying that, to their knowledge, no one had access to the phone from the time it left the boat until it was placed inside the truck. With different people sharing conflicting accounts, the situation quickly became a back-and-forth debate, leaving many observers unsure of what to believe. Christine maintained that information had disappeared from Nolan's phone, while his friends insisted that wouldn't have been possible because, according to them, none of them could even unlock the device. That disagreement quickly split public opinion, with many people saying the friend's explanation sounded more believable. After all, most people don't casually share the passcode to their personal phone, and even if they do in a rare situation, it's usually temporary and often changed afterward. The idea that an entire group of friends would all know the same passcode simply didn't seem convincing to many people, and that only added more discussion online. That wasn't the only part of Christine's story that drew attention. During the same Good Morning America interview, she also described how she tracked Nolan's phone using different location services. Instead of clearing things up, her explanation left many viewers with even more questions. People began looking closely at every detail she shared, trying to understand how the timeline fit together. Christine explained that the location information from Snapchat didn't match the location information shown through Life 360. She didn't say exactly how far apart the two locations were or provide specific measurements during the interview. Instead, she simply described the two sets of location data as inconsistent with each other. That detail quickly became another major point of discussion, as many people wondered what could have caused the difference and whether there was a simple explanation behind it. Nancy Grace also weighed in on the discussion, and she made it clear that she wasn't convinced by Christine's explanation. When someone with her background publicly questions a version of events, it naturally gets people talking even more. Her comments quickly became another major topic of conversation as viewers compared the different accounts being shared. Nancy explained that she could understand location data being slightly off by a few blocks because technology isn't always perfectly accurate. However, she suggested that the larger difference being described didn't seem to fit with what she would normally expect. Those remarks added another layer to an already complicated situation, and they encouraged even more people to take a closer look at the timeline and the details being discussed. This was just one of several points in the story that continued to raise questions.
We're pulling up the location from Snapchat. So the Snapchat location looks completely different than the Life 360 location. So when I pulled up Life 360, it was different. It was showing everywhere the phone had been. I was like, well, it's showing that he's back on land. He was like, but no, he didn't come back with us.
From the very beginning, Christine said she couldn't understand why Nolan would choose to remain behind with someone he had only recently met. Because of that, she questioned the version of events shared by several people who were there that day, including Katie, who said Nolan decided to stay behind with her. Christine explained that Nolan had always been taught to stay with the group and avoid separating from the people he arrived with. In her view, that made the reported sequence of events difficult to believe, and it became one of the biggest points of disagreement in the case. However, others involved publicly shared a different account. Ashley Cole, a judge whose stepson Warren was on the boat that day, posted a statement on Facebook explaining that the boat left at around 4:30 because it was experiencing mechanical trouble. Warren later added more detail, saying the issue involved the boat's bilge pump. According to his account, Nolan made the personal decision to remain on the island with Katie, while the rest of the group focused on dealing with the problem. That explanation has remained consistent in public discussions and has been repeated by multiple people connected to the situation. As a result, many people have noticed the clear difference between Christine's understanding of what Nolan would have done and the accounts shared by those who said they were present that day. Christine's perspective is based on how she says Nolan was raised and the choices she believes he typically would have made. Meanwhile, others continue to stand by their version of events. Those conflicting accounts have kept the conversation going, with many observers comparing each statement as they try to make sense of the timeline and the different perspectives being presented. Adding even more attention to the case, Former FBI agent Jennifer Koffendorfer publicly shared her assessment after reviewing information that had been discussed, including surveillance footage, witness statements, Coast Guard communications, and reports about the water conditions in the area. Based on the material she said was publicly available, her opinion was that the evidence appeared to point toward a tragic accident rather than intentional wrongdoing. Her comments introduced another perspective and added even more debate to an already highly discussed case. Another issue that sparked questions came after Nolan was located. Christine explained that the day after Nolan disappeared, his father, Elmore Wansley, went out by boat to search near Horn Island, spending significant time looking through the area in hopes of finding him. According to her account, that search did not lead to any results at the time. Then, not long afterward, Nolan was located, leading some people to question how the timeline fit together. That sequence of events has become another topic of public discussion. Some observers have wondered how such an extensive search could have ended without locating Nolan, while others believe there may be reasonable explanations based on changing conditions, search patterns, visibility, or other factors that have not been fully explained publicly. Because there are differing viewpoints and not every detail has been confirmed, the timeline continues to be debated, with people comparing the available information and drawing their own conclusions based on the facts that have been shared.
And this is the part that bothers me, because I don't know if she intentionally did this in a malicious way, which will make me lose a tremendous amount of respect for her, or are these hood knuckle-dragging thugs who are siphoning money out the Black community, leveraging young brothers, convinced her to say this in order to push a narrative. Let me show you why I say this. And I'm not saying which one is right, but this is why.
So what did Judge Mathis actually have to say about everything? At the beginning of this case, he was very vocal in supporting Nolan's family and encouraging a thorough review of what happened. More recently, however, many people have noticed that his comments have become more measured as additional information and differing accounts have been discussed publicly. Even so, he has continued to say that Nolan's case deserves careful attention and that every important question should be fully examined. While Judge Mathis has continued to advocate for answers, he has also openly questioned some Christine's public statements. According to his comments, he believes there are details in her timeline and descriptions that deserve closer scrutiny. At the same time, he has made it clear that he believes the circumstances surrounding Nolan's case should continue to be reviewed rather than dismissed. His position has sparked plenty of conversation because it shows he's willing to question every side instead of accepting one version of events without further examination. Judge Mathis also referred to the findings from an independent forensic examination that Christine requested after expressing concerns about the official investigation. He pointed to observations described in that report that, in his opinion, should receive additional attention. At the same time, he didn't limit his concerns to one side of the story. He also questioned parts of the account shared by some of Nolan's friends, saying there were inconsistencies that made the overall timeline difficult to piece together. According to him, there are still many unanswered questions, and he believes every detail should be carefully reviewed before anyone reaches a final conclusion. Judge Mathis also addressed another point that caught people's attention. He explained that while he believes every claim deserves to be examined carefully, it's just as important not to treat assumptions as confirmed facts. In his view, the only way to reach a reliable conclusion is by comparing physical evidence, witness accounts, and expert opinions instead of focusing on just one piece of the puzzle. That approach is why he's continued asking for a thorough review from every angle. He also suggested that some of the public discussion has become driven by emotion, making it harder to separate verified information from speculation. According to him, once different versions of the story begin circulating, it becomes easy for rumors to spread much faster than confirmed details. That's why he encouraged people to pay close attention to what has actually been documented instead of relying only on online theories or social media posts that may not tell the full story.
Roll the clip.
We've heard different accounts of how long he's known them. And I was wondering also if you folks have spoken to those families since they lawyered up.
High school friends.
Yeah.
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 Have I talked to the families? No.
I haven't spoken.
Last question. I haven't spoken to the family.
That's it. So she gets on there and she says they haven't spoken to the family or did anything like that, alluding to the fact that as if the family haven't tried to communicate with her since you lawyered up, meaning that they lawyered up and they haven't heard any contact from the family.
At the same time, people following the case noticed that nearly every public statement seemed to introduce another disagreement. One interview would raise new questions, another would offer a different explanation, and before long, the timeline became even more difficult to follow. Supporters of Christine argued that she was simply trying to keep attention on her son's case, while others believed the change in details made it harder to understand what really happened. With so many conflicting accounts being discussed, separating established facts from personal opinions became one of the biggest challenges as the story continued to unfold. One issue that has continued to stand out is how differently the same events have been described depending on who is speaking. On one side, family members have questioned whether every important detail has been uncovered. On the other, several people who were present that day have continued to stand by the accounts they shared from the beginning. That contrast has made the timeline especially difficult to piece together because each version highlights different moments and reaches different conclusions. Another point that has drawn attention is that no single public statement has answered every question. Instead, each interview has filled in one part of the story while leaving another part open to interpretation. Some details appear consistent across multiple accounts, while others remain disputed. Because of that, people following the case have spent a great deal of time comparing interviews, official updates, and public records to see where the accounts overlap and where they begin to differ.
Well, here is Ashley Cole, the stepmama who's a judge, is what they say, and she's a family law judge. She's not even a criminal judge. So, they want to make her out to be like she's going to interfere with the case, which she don't have no leverage to interfere with the case, to be quite honest. But anyway, this is her, and we got this leaked to us. And so we have this information available. As you can see it, this has been verified. I saw it with my own eyes. And this is a message from Ashley Cole to Nolan's mother. And it says, Christine, this is Ashley Cole. If or when you ever want to talk to me, this is my number. This was on July the 7th.
Correct.
Now, the question is, if you want to know what happened to your son and you think that his friends are responsible, had any involvement, it would be conducive for you to say, let me talk to their mama and see what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Judge Mathis has repeatedly emphasized that those differences shouldn't be ignored. Rather than accepting one explanation outright, he has argued that every inconsistency deserves to be examined carefully. At the same time, he has stressed that public opinion should not replace a careful review of the available evidence. His position has remained focused on finding clear answers, even if that means asking difficult questions of everyone involved. As more information is surfaced over time, the focus is shifted toward understanding which details can be independently verified and which ones still require additional clarification before the full picture can become clear. As more interviews and public statements were released, another pattern started to emerge. Instead of resolving the unanswered questions, many of the updates seemed to introduce new details that people hadn't heard before. That made it increasingly difficult for viewers to determine which information came directly from first-hand accounts and which parts reflected personal opinions or interpretations. With so many versions circulating, even small differences began receiving close attention. Several legal analysts and commentators have also pointed out that conflicting statements are not unusual in complex cases, especially when multiple people are trying to recall the same events from memory. Different perspectives, stress, and the passage of time can all affect how someone remembers a situation. Because of that, investigators typically compare witness accounts with physical evidence, digital records, and other documented information, instead of relying on any single interview alone. That process can take time, but it is designed to build the most accurate timeline possible.
Because she is offering to communicate, even though they have lawyers. Yes. And the thing is, the boys didn't lawyer up immediately. Warren had a lawyer before anybody else, but the rest of the boys did an interview, equivalent of a polygraph test, all with no lawyers. So they act like they all lawyered up. That's not what happened. And then, even if they lawyered up, the mom said, come talk to me.
Yes.
And what did she do? She don't say anything.
Meanwhile, those following Nolan's case have continued examining every public update, looking for details that either support or contradict earlier statements. Some believe the differences are significant and deserve additional explanation, while others argue that not every inconsistency necessarily changes the overall picture. Even Judge Mathis has suggested that the focus should remain on verified facts rather than assumptions, emphasizing that careful review is more important than rushing to conclusions. As the timeline continued to develop, attention gradually shifted toward the next round of information that could help clarify how the events of that day unfolded. Another topic that has received plenty of attention is the role social media has played throughout the case. Nearly every interview, public statement, or newly released detail has been analyzed online within hours, with people comparing older clips to newer ones in an effort to spot changes or inconsistencies. Some viewers believe those comparisons have uncovered important questions, while others argue that short clips taken out of context can easily create confusion instead of providing clarity. That has made it even more important to separate confirmed information from speculation. At the same time, several commentators have noted that public discussions can sometimes move much faster than official reviews. Online theories often spread quickly, but they don't always include the full context behind a statement or event. That's one reason why legal experts frequently remind people to rely on documented facts, verified records, and official findings whenever possible. A single quote or interview clip may sound significant on its own, but it doesn't always tell the complete story without the surrounding details.
She had to make a correction.
Yes.
A few days later, roll it.
But the parents, again, they've offered, and I need to correct myself because I think yesterday in one of the interviews, I think I said that maybe none of them, I want to say 2 or 3 of them have reached out. I'm just the first one expressing her condolences. Another one just saying, hey, give me a call if and when you're ready type of deal.
Judge Mathis has continued returning to that same point. While he has openly questioned certain public statements and encouraged closer examination of the timeline, he has also emphasized that every claim should be evaluated fairly and consistently. Rather than focusing on one person alone, he has argued that every account deserves the same level of scrutiny. That approach has kept the attention on comparing the available evidence, reviewing the timeline step by step, and seeing whether future information helps explain the remaining gaps in the story, rather than relying on assumptions alone. One detail that has continued to come up is how much weight should be given to public interviews compared with official records. Throughout the case, different people have shared their own recollections of what happened, but those statements haven't always matched perfectly. That's why many legal analysts have explained that interviews can provide useful context, yet they are only one piece of a much larger picture. Investigators generally compare those statements with documented evidence before drawing any conclusions, especially when timelines become complicated. Another point that has been widely discussed is how quickly early assumptions can shape public opinion. Once an idea begins circulating online, it can be repeated so often that people start treating it as an established fact, even when it hasn't been independently confirmed. That's one reason many commentators have urged viewers to distinguish between verified information, personal opinions, and ongoing speculation. Keeping those categories separate makes it easier to understand which details are supported by documentation and which are still being debated.
Watching the press conference that Nolan Wells' parents did, alongside Ben Crump and Reverend Al Sharpton, there are even more important key details that have come out that we need to be talking about. Let's start with the fact that the parents went to the exact location where the body was found the day before the body was found, and there was no body there. Yes, you heard me correctly. So Nolan Wells' father says in the press conference that he didn't have access to a boat to go and look for his son that night. So early that morning, 5 o'clock in the morning the next day, one of his coaches called Nolan Wells' father and said that he would take them out on a boat.
As more information became available, attention also turned to whether the different accounts could eventually be reconciled. Some observers believe the inconsistencies have reasonable explanations and simply haven't been fully clarified yet, while others think the unanswered questions deserve further examination. Judge Mathis has continued emphasizing that every version of events should be evaluated by the same standard without giving automatic preference to any single account. With that in mind, the next developments would likely depend on whether additional evidence or new statements can help connect the remaining pieces of the timeline. Another reason this case has remained so difficult to follow is that nearly every major update has been interpreted in different ways. Some people see certain details as raising important questions, while others believe those same details have reasonable explanations. That difference in perspective has made it challenging to build one clear timeline that everyone agrees on. Instead, each new interview or public statement has been compared with earlier ones to see whether the accounts remain consistent. At the center of much of the discussion is the question of credibility. Rather than focusing on one single event, many observers have been looking at whether each person's account has stayed the same over time. When details appear to change, some people view that as a reason to ask more questions, while others point out that memories can naturally vary, especially after stressful situations. Legal experts often note that consistency is important, but it is only one factor considered alongside documented evidence and other verified information. For Judge Mathis, that distinction has remained a key part of his comments. He has repeatedly said that asking difficult questions should apply to everyone involved, not just one side. In his view, the goal is to understand how all the available information fits together, instead of relying on isolated statements. That means comparing interviews, reviewing the timeline carefully, and considering any additional records that may provide further context. As more pieces are examined side by side, the picture becomes more detailed, but several important questions still remain unanswered, leaving the next developments to fill in the remaining gaps. One thing that has become increasingly clear is that this case has generated just as many questions about communication as it has about the timeline itself. Over time, different interviews, social media posts, and public appearances have all added new pieces to the story. However, not every update has matched previous statements exactly, leading many people to compare older comments with newer ones in search of a clearer sequence of events. Even small differences have received close attention because people are trying to understand how everything fits together. At the same time, several legal commentators have pointed out that public discussions and official reviews don't always move at the same pace. While online conversations often focus on the latest interview or statement, investigators generally look at a much broader collection of information before forming conclusions. That includes documented records, timelines, digital information, and witness accounts that can be reviewed side by side. Looking at only one source rarely provides the complete picture, which is why experts often caution against reaching conclusions too quickly.
They went out to the island looking for Nolan. They looked all over the island and could not find him. Now, it's also important to note that there were people that had stayed overnight on the island. So if Nolan was actually stuck on the island, there were people there that he could have asked for help. There were also 2 boats that were docked. So at the very least, he would have had shelter until he was able to find help. Now, they went out to Horn Island on the 5th looking for him. On the 6th, they got a call saying that his body washed up to the shore and they found it, but his parents had just been there the day before.
Judge Mathis has continued stressing that same idea throughout his public comments. He has encouraged people to stay focused on information that can be verified while remaining open to new facts as they become available. According to him, every statement should be measured against the available evidence instead of being accepted at face value. As more interviews and records have been examined, the conversation has gradually shifted from individual claims to the broader question of how all the different pieces connect. That shift has led many people to pay closer attention to the next updates, hoping they will provide more context for the timeline and the events surrounding Nolan's case. Judge Mathis also raised another question that he believes deserves a closer look. He discussed the circumstances surrounding Nolan being left on Horn Island without his phone and suggested that this is one of several details that should be carefully examined as the case continues. Throughout his public comments, he has consistently said that every unanswered question deserves a fair review and that the full timeline should be thoroughly understood before any final conclusions are reached. He also made it clear that if any public statements have been inaccurate or incomplete, correcting the record would ultimately help everyone involved. In his view, keeping the focus on verified facts is the best way to ensure the case receives the careful attention it deserves. At the same time, public opinion has remained divided. Some people continue to support Christine and believe she is doing everything she can to keep attention on Nolan's case, while others have questioned whether some of her public statements have created additional confusion. Online, reactions have continued to vary. Some commenters have questioned the family's media appearances, while others have defended them by pointing out that people respond to difficult situations in different ways. One person wrote, "All these interviews and not one tear?" Another commented, "They're actually participating in a Q&A? That's really bizarre, especially since there's an ongoing investigation." These are opinions shared publicly and do not establish what actually happened. Now it's your turn. What do you think about the different accounts that have been shared throughout this case? Do you believe the remaining questions will eventually be answered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who want to